My girlfriend said, "You'll never be as good as my ex." I just smiled. Then I invited her ex to our apartment and let him see what she'd been hiding from him for years. When you live with someone long enough, the little details start to show you who they really are. Marina and I had been together for almost 3 years, and in that time, I'd thought I'd gotten used to her sharp tongue. She could be cutting when she was angry, but I usually let it roll off. We'd built a decent life together, shared rent on a decent apartment, a rhythm of cooking together, splitting chores, weekend outings. Nothing spectacular, but it felt stable. Until one night when she looked at me, jaw tight, and delivered the kind of sentence that sticks in your chest like broken glass. "You'll never be as good as Jason." She said it low, almost muttering it under her breath, but she knew I'd hear. Jason, the ex she never liked to discuss. The one she claimed had been toxic, though she'd never gone into details. The name came out like poison, and the comparison was enough to sting. I forced myself to stay calm. I laughed it off, changed the subject, and let her think the words had bounced off me. But they didn't. They burrowed. That was the night I started paying closer attention. At first, it was subtle things. A drawer in her desk she always kept locked. A box at the back of the closet she told me not to move when I was reorganizing. Her phone lighting up late at night with calls she quickly silenced, saying it was a coworker who didn't respect boundaries. Normally, I might have let it slide, but after that comment about Jason, my brain started connecting dots I hadn't noticed before. One Saturday morning, while she showered, I went into the closet to grab a sweater and spotted that same box wedged between a suitcase and a stack of old blankets. It was taped shut, but one corner was frayed, just enough for me to peel it back. Inside were papers, medical forms, judging by the hospital letterhead, and an envelope thick with documents. I slid it out just as I heard the water cut off, shoved it under my sweater, and retreated to the living room. When she came out, hair damp, wrapped in a towel, she didn't notice anything out of place. She went about making coffee, humming softly. My heart pounded, the envelope heavy in my lap. I excused myself, saying I needed to grab something from the car, and slipped outside. I sat in the driver's seat, opened the envelope, and began flipping through. At first, it was routine paperwork, insurance claims, hospital visits from years ago. Then my eyes froze on one particular document. A birth certificate. The date was nearly 8 years ago. The mother, Marina. The father, left blank. The child's name was listed, but what hit me hardest was the hospital's seal, stamped and real. My stomach dropped. Marina had a child. I leaned back against the seat, trying to process. She had never once mentioned being pregnant. Not once in the years we'd been together had she slipped up or hinted at it. The birth had happened back when she was still with Jason. A sick thought crept in. Had Jason known? Did he know he had a child out there? If so, why had Marina acted like he was ancient history, someone she wanted nothing to do with? I kept reading. Buried deeper in the stack was paperwork that changed everything. A set of adoption forms, filed shortly after the birth. Marina had signed over parental rights. The father's name was still blank, which meant she hadn't involved Jason at all. The narrative she had built about Jason being toxic, about their relationship being a disaster, suddenly it felt like a smokescreen. I pictured Jason, whoever he was, living his life under the impression his ex had moved on, while in reality she had carried his child and given it away without telling him. The thought made me nauseous. That night, I couldn't look at her the same way. We ordered takeout and watched a movie, but every laugh she forced, every casual brush of her hand against mine, felt fake. I wondered if she could see it in my face, that I knew something she'd buried for nearly a decade. But she seemed relaxed, comfortable, sipping wine and scrolling through her phone like nothing in the world was wrong. I excused myself early, claiming exhaustion, and lay awake staring at the ceiling. Questions raced through my head. Why hadn't she told Jason? Did the child know? Did the adoptive parents know the truth? And why keep the paperwork? Why not destroy it if she never wanted it to surface? The next day, I tried a test. Casually, over breakfast, I asked her what she thought about adoption. She froze, spoon halfway to her mouth, before recovering with a too-quick laugh. "Weird question," she said. "I don't really think about it." Then she changed the subject to grocery shopping. That small hesitation was all the confirmation I needed. She knew exactly what I was circling around. Over the following week, I started piecing together more clues. Marina had a habit of keeping a locked folder on her laptop. She guarded it fiercely, closing the screen whenever I walked by. One evening, when she stepped out to take a call, I tried guessing the password. 3 failed attempts and the screen threatened to wipe, so I stopped, pulse racing. Whatever was in there, she was terrified of me seeing. I went back to the documents. Among them was a hospital wristband with a date that matched the birth. There was also a receipt for a hotel room near the hospital, as if she'd hidden out after giving birth. The more I stared at the papers, the more sinister it felt. This wasn't just a secret. It was a deliberate erasure of a chapter of her life. And yet, she'd kept the evidence. Part of me wondered if it was guilt, some need to hold on to the proof of what she'd done. But another part of me thought, maybe she still checked on the child, maybe she tracked them somehow. That night, curiosity got the better of me. I searched her browsing history. She'd deleted most of it, but tucked between pages of recipes and work emails were visits to a social media account that seemed to belong to a family in another state. A man, a woman, and a child about 8 years old. The girl's smile was uncanny. She looked like a smaller version of Jason, judging by the few photos of him I could find online. That was the moment everything locked into place. Marina hadn't just had a child. She had lied to Jason, given the baby away, and then kept tabs on her from afar like a ghost in the background of their lives. The weight of the secret pressed on me in silence. I couldn't confront her yet. Not without a plan. I needed confirmation, proof that couldn't be denied. If I pushed too soon, she'd find a way to twist the story, maybe even destroy the evidence. So I played along, smiled, laughed at her jokes, kissed her goodnight. But inside, I was spiraling. Every glance at her made my chest tighten, knowing she was capable of burying something so monumental and never speaking a word of it. The more I thought about Jason, the angrier I got. This wasn't just about me being lied to. It was about a man who had been robbed of the chance to know his own child. I didn't know Jason personally, but suddenly I felt like I owed him something. The truth. I started digging deeper, searching public databases, adoption registries, anything I could find. Late nights hunched over my laptop, the glow of the screen painting my face. I learned the child had been placed with the family I'd found online, and the adoption had been closed, no contact allowed, which meant Jason never had a chance to object. The most chilling document was the original form Marina had signed. Under father's consent, the line was blank. She hadn't even given Jason the option. She'd erased him entirely. By the end of that week, the foundation of my relationship with Marina was rubble. The woman I thought I knew was a stranger. Every shared memory felt tainted. And I realized something that made my pulse quicken. I couldn't keep this to myself. Jason needed to know. But before I could even think about contacting him, I had to be absolutely certain. If I went to him with flimsy evidence, he'd dismiss me. Worse, Marina could spin the narrative and make me out to be some obsessive boyfriend digging up her past. I needed airtight proof. So I began planning, watching her movements, noting when she left the apartment, when she locked her laptop, when she checked her phone. I became a ghost in my own home, quietly collecting data, biding my time. Every time she leaned over to kiss me goodnight, every time she smiled across the table, I thought of the little girl with Jason's smile, living her life without a father who had no idea she existed. That secret burned in the pit of my stomach, and I knew it was only a matter of time before I forced it into the light. The hardest part of living with a liar is pretending you still believe them. Every morning, I got up, made coffee, and listened to Marina ramble about her coworkers or weekend plans. I smiled, nodded, and acted like nothing had changed. Meanwhile, inside my head, the truth festered. I couldn't stop thinking about Jason, how he had probably lived for years with the weight of a loss that had never happened. If Marina had told him she miscarried, then he had likely mourned. He might have cried himself to sleep, buried the hope of being a father, and carried that scar into every relationship after. And all the while, his daughter was alive, growing up in another state with strangers. I had to know more. My first step was to verify what I already suspected. I went back to the documents. The adoption forms were stamped by the county court, but there was no mention of Jason anywhere. It was a closed adoption, finalized within weeks of the birth. No father listed. Marina had done this alone. I started searching through public records late at night, while Marina slept beside me. I combed through birth registries, adoption notices, anything I could get my hands on. Most records were sealed, but with enough cross-referencing, I began piecing together a trail. The child, listed as Baby Girl S in court filings, had been adopted by a couple in another state, Ethan and Caroline, though their last name was redacted in the public record. That alone wasn't enough, but when I matched the dates with Marina's hospital stay and then cross-checked her browsing history, everything lined up. The social media page she stalked belonged to a family who had posted a birth announcement at the exact time Marina gave birth. Photos of the child were scattered across the page: birthday parties, vacations, school plays. She was around 8 now, bright-eyed, with a smile that mirrored Jason's so perfectly it hurt to look at. I took screenshots of everything, but I needed to confirm Jason's side of the story. If Marina had really told him she miscarried, there had to be some record of it. I dug deeper, searching for hospital records under his insurance. Nothing was public, but I found something strange: an old forum post from nearly a decade ago. Someone with a username tied to Jason's old email had written about losing a baby. It was vague, Just a grieving man spilling his heartbreak onto the internet. But it was enough. He had believed it. I scrolled through the comments. People had offered condolences, shared their own stories of miscarriage and loss. Jason had replied once, saying he didn't know how to move forward. Reading those words, I felt a wave of anger unlike anything before. Marina hadn't just lied. She had stolen his grief and weaponized it. I kept my distance from Marina, careful not to slip. If she caught me digging, she'd cover her tracks, maybe even destroy the documents. So I played the role of the affectionate boyfriend, all while building a case against her. I even reached out to an old friend who worked in family services. Without giving away too much, I asked about closed adoptions, about what it would take for a biological father to reopen a case. She told me it was rare, nearly impossible without evidence of fraud or coercion. But when I asked if the absence of a father's name could count as fraud, she hesitated. If he was never informed? That could change things. I knew then what I had to do. Jason needed proof. Solid, undeniable proof. My next move was riskier. One evening, while Marina was out with friends, I forced open the locked drawer in her desk. Inside were more papers, an ultrasound photo, faded but still clear, dated 9 years ago. Notes scribbled in Marina's handwriting, due in March. There were also letters she'd written but never sent. One addressed to Jason, torn in half. The letter was short, shaky. I can't tell you the truth. You'd never forgive me. It's better this way. I felt my throat tighten as I held the scraps. She had been on the edge of confessing once, but fear had stopped her. Instead, she had built a lie so heavy that it crushed everything around it. I photographed everything and returned the drawer to its place before she came home. The next morning, Marina acted like nothing was wrong. She made pancakes, humming a tune, smiling as though she wasn't a woman sitting on the biggest lie of her life. I watched her carefully, every gesture seeming calculated. She wasn't just hiding this from Jason. She was hiding it from herself, too, burying the guilt under routine. I knew then that confronting her outright wouldn't work. She'd deny, twist, manipulate. No, this wasn't about me getting answers anymore. It was about Jason. He deserved to know the truth, even if it shattered everything. I spent the next few days preparing. I mapped out Jason's digital footprint, his current address, his workplace, his social media. He wasn't hard to find. He worked as a contractor in the next city over, still used the same email address he'd had years ago. But I couldn't just show up at his door. I needed to be sure I had the kind of evidence that couldn't be brushed off. The birth certificate, the adoption papers, the ultrasound photo, the unsent letter. Piece by piece, I gathered it all into a neat folder. The only thing left was to tie Marina directly to the lie she told him. And for that, I needed her words. That opportunity came sooner than I expected. One evening, she left her laptop open while taking a shower. For once, she hadn't closed the locked folder. Maybe she was in a rush. Maybe she slipped. Either way, I took the chance. Inside were old email drafts. Messages to Jason, unsent, dated around the time of the birth. One of them froze my blood. I lost the baby. It wasn't your fault. Please don't contact me again. I can't handle it. There it was. The lie in black and white. She had written it, saved it, and at some point sent it. I searched Jason's old social accounts and found a reply from that exact time, a post dripping with grief. It all lined up perfectly. I copied everything. Heart racing as the shower turned off. I logged out and shut the laptop, slipping back into my role as though nothing had happened. Over the next week, my mind shifted from shock to strategy. I had what I needed. The documents, the photos, the unsent letters, the email draft. Marina had built a wall of lies, but I now had the tools to tear it down. Still, I wasn't ready to go to Jason directly. Not yet. I wanted him to see it for himself, not through some random man he'd never met. He needed to see Marina unravel in front of him. And that meant setting a trap. I began planning carefully. I'd invite Jason to the apartment under the pretense of something neutral. A conversation, face-to-face, with Marina present. I'd let him see the documents. Let him hear the words from her mouth. But as I mapped it out, something strange started happening. The more evidence I collected, the more detached I felt from Marina. She was no longer my girlfriend in my mind. She was a suspect. A liar I was building a case against. I looked at her across the dinner table and thought of her as if she were already on trial. One night, she curled up next to me, head on my chest, whispering that she loved me. I stared at the ceiling, thinking of the little girl with Jason's smile. Marina's words felt hollow, a script she'd rehearsed to keep me in place. I knew then that once I pulled the trigger, there would be no going back. She would be exposed, Jason's life would be shattered, and mine would never be the same. But I couldn't stop. The lie was too big. It had gone on too long. And I was the only one who knew the truth. By the end of that week, I had everything organized. A folder on my laptop, a physical binder with copies, even backups on a flash drive hidden in my car. Marina suspected nothing. She went about her days, laughing, shopping, planning, while the ground beneath her life slowly cracked. I watched her with a kind of grim patience. Soon, Jason would walk through that door. Soon, she'd have to look him in the eyes and answer for what she'd done. And when that day came, I'd be ready. The folder sat heavy on my desk, a neat stack of paper and screenshots that could shatter 3 lives at once. Every time I opened it, my pulse quickened. There was no turning back now. I had Jason's email. I drafted the message a dozen times, deleted it, rewritten it. The hardest part was figuring out how to make him believe me. If I came across as some bitter boyfriend trying to stir up trouble, he'd block me before reading past the first line. I needed to strike the right balance. Calm, factual, undeniable. So I typed slowly, carefully. Jason, you don't know me. My name is Caleb. I'm with Marina now. I know this will sound impossible, but I found documents you need to see. They concern a child Marina had years ago. I believe the child is yours. She told you it was a miscarriage. It wasn't. I have proof. Please meet me before you dismiss this. I attached a single image, the birth certificate with Marina's name and the blank father's line. I didn't want to overwhelm him yet, just enough to grab his attention. Then I hit send and waited. I didn't expect a response that night. But the next morning, as Marina showered, my phone buzzed. A new email. From Jason. If this is some kind of sick joke, I'll find you. But if you're telling the truth, I need to see everything. My hands trembled as I typed back. Meet me. Tomorrow evening. Neutral ground. Coffee shop on 8th and Pine. I'll bring proof. He agreed. The following day dragged like a slow bleed. Marina went about her routine, oblivious. She complained about work, shopped for a new dress online, kissed me goodbye as if nothing in the world was wrong. I nodded, smiled, and carried the weight of her secret like a live grenade in my chest. At 6 o'clock sharp, I walked into the coffee shop with the binder under my arm. Jason was already there. He was taller than I expected, broad-shouldered, early 30s, with a tired face that looked like it had seen too much. His eyes locked on me the second I walked in. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. You'd better not be screwing with me. I slid into the booth, placed the binder on the table, and opened it. No theatrics. Just the facts. Birth certificate. Adoption papers. Ultrasound. The unsent letter. His face went pale as he flipped through. His jaw clenched, fingers tightening on the edge of the table. She told me she lost the baby. He muttered, voice low and raw. I buried it. He stopped, swallowing hard. His eyes burned holes into the page. She let me believe my child was dead. I nodded slowly. She didn't just let you believe it. She made sure you did. She gave the baby up for adoption. Closed case. You were erased. Jason pressed his hands against his face, dragging them down. He looked like he might break right there in the booth. But then his voice hardened. Where's the kid now? With a family out of state, I said. Happy. Healthy. I've seen photos. But they don't know you exist. As far as they're concerned, Marina was the only parent. For a long time, Jason just stared at the table. Finally, he exhaled through gritted teeth. I need to hear it from her. That's what I want too, I said. I'll set it up. Tomorrow. My apartment. You walk in, she won't expect you. She won't have time to spin anything. You'll see her reaction with your own eyes. Jason nodded, eyes cold. Do it. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured Marina's face when Jason walked through the door. Would she cry? Lie? Scream? I imagined the mask slipping, the truth tumbling out, her empire of lies collapsing in front of the man she had wronged most. By morning, my nerves were steel. I texted Jason the plan. Come by at 7. Knock once, then let yourself in. Marina spent the day buzzing with energy, oblivious to the storm coming her way. She cooked dinner, poured wine, asked if I wanted to watch something. I played along, every smile forced, every laugh hollow. When she settled onto the couch, scrolling on her phone, I checked my watch. 6:58. A knock sounded at the door. Marina glanced up, confused. Who's that? I'll get it, I said calmly. I opened the door. Jason stood there, shoulders tense, eyes locked on mine. Without a word, I stepped aside. Marina's face drained of color the second she saw him. She froze, phone slipping from her hand onto the couch. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Jason stepped inside, his gaze like a blade. Tell me it isn't true. Marina stammered. What are you doing here? You told me my baby died. His voice shook with fury. But she didn't, did she? You gave her away. The room went silent, the air thick with years of buried lies. Marina's eyes darted between us, desperate, cornered. She shook her head violently. No, it's not like that. You don't understand. Jason slammed the binder onto the coffee table. Papers spilled out, birth certificate, adoption forms, ultrasound. Explain this, Marina. Explain how you erased me from my own child's life. Her hands trembled as she picked up the papers, eyes wide. She looked at me, betrayal twisting her features. You went through my things. Answer the question, Jason snapped. Marina's voice cracked. I was scared. You weren't ready. We were falling apart, Jason. You would have left me, and I couldn't raise a baby alone. I did what I had to do. Jason's face hardened. You stole my daughter. You made me grieve for nothing. Tears welled in her eyes. But there was no remorse, only desperation. I thought it was the best choice. You don't know how hard it was. Jason cut her off, slamming his fist against the table. Don't you dare play the victim. You lied. You robbed me of 8 years with my child. Do you have any idea what that feels like? Marina collapsed onto the couch, head in her hands. For the first time since I'd met her, she looked small, weak, exposed. Jason turned to me. I want everything you have. Every file, every screenshot. I'll take this to court. I nodded. You'll get it all. Marina lifted her head, eyes bloodshot. Jason, please. If you do this, she'll lose her stability. She's happy where she is. Don't ruin her life just to punish me. Jason stared at her, jaw tight. Don't twist this. You ruined her life when you decided she didn't deserve her father. The words landed heavy. Marina shrank under the weight of them, trembling. She reached for me, desperate. Caleb, tell him this isn't fair. You know I love you. You know I did what I thought was right. I pulled my hand back. You don't love me. You don't even know what love is. You lie to survive. And now the truth's here. Her face crumpled. For once, she had no script, no manipulation to cling to. Just silence. Jason picked up the binder, clutching it to his chest like a weapon. We're not done. Not by a long shot. He turned to me. Thank you. Then he walked out, leaving the door wide open behind him. Marina sat frozen, her world collapsing in real time. She didn't chase him. She didn't scream. She just stared at the floor, lips trembling, as though her lies had finally caught up with her and wrapped around her throat. I stood there, watching the woman I once thought I'd build a future with, now reduced to ashes of her own making. And I knew this was only the beginning. The door shut behind Jason with a finality that echoed through the apartment. For a long time, Marina didn't move. She sat slumped on the couch, hands limp in her lap, eyes fixed on nothing. Her phone buzzed where it had fallen to the floor, but she didn't pick it up. The silence between us felt like an abyss. I didn't speak either. There was nothing left to say. The lies had already been stripped bare, and what remained was the hollow truth. Marina had built her life on a secret so monstrous it had poisoned everything. Finally, she whispered, "You've ruined me." The words were quiet, but the venom behind them was sharp. She turned her head toward me, her face streaked with tears, mascara smudged into dark lines. You had no right. None. This was my life, my choice. How dare you drag him into it? I kept my voice steady. It was never just your choice. It was his child, too. Her body tensed. She shot up from the couch, pacing, hands clutching her hair. You don't understand. Jason would have left me. He was already slipping away. I couldn't raise a baby alone. I couldn't. You could have told him. I cut in. You could have given him the chance. Instead, you let him bury a child that wasn't dead. You lied, Marina, for years. And you let that lie rot both your lives. She stopped pacing, eyes blazing. And what about you? You think you're some kind of hero? You destroyed us. You handed him a weapon to use against me. Do you think he won't drag me through the courts, humiliate me, take everything I have left? I met her gaze. He's not the one who did this. You are. The next few days unfolded like a slow-motion car crash. Jason kept his word. He called me within 24 hours, asking for the full set of documents. I handed over everything, both physical and digital copies. He thanked me curtly, his voice raw with emotion, and said his lawyer was already drafting petitions to unseal the adoption records. Marina, meanwhile, unraveled. She barely ate, barely slept. She would lash out 1 minute, screaming that I had betrayed her, and then collapse into sobs the next, begging me to stand by her, to help her fight. I didn't. I'd already checked out. I stayed in the apartment only long enough to pack my things. Watching her spin between rage and despair was like standing too close to a collapsing building. Any second, the rubble might crush you. You'll regret this, she spat as I zipped my suitcase. You think Jason's some noble father figure? He'll use you and toss you aside. And when he takes me to court, when he digs up my past, I'll make sure you're dragged into it too. I paused in the doorway, looking at her one last time. There's nothing left here for me to regret. Then I left. Life outside of Marina's apartment felt surreal at first. The air tasted sharper, cleaner. I rented a small place across town, sparse but peaceful, and for the first time in months I slept without the weight of secrets pressing down on me. Jason kept me updated in brief bursts. The legal process was grueling. Petitions, hearings, endless paperwork, but his lawyer was relentless. The key was the proof that Marina had knowingly excluded him from the adoption. Fraud, the lawyer called it. Enough to reopen the case. Word spread quickly among Marina's circle of friends and family. She tried to control the narrative, painting herself as a scared young woman who had made a difficult choice. But the evidence was too strong, and the story too shocking. People began to distance themselves. Invitations stopped coming. Calls went unanswered. She had built her identity on control. Control over her image, her relationships, her lies. Now that control was gone. Weeks passed. One evening, Jason called me, his voice steadier than before. They've agreed to let me petition for contact. It's not guaranteed, but it's a start. There was a long pause. Then he said quietly, "She looks just like me. The photos you showed me. I can't stop staring. 8 years I thought she was gone. 8 years I could have been her dad." I didn't know what to say. Nothing could undo the time he had lost. But at least now he had the chance to know the truth, to try to build something real. "Thank you," he said finally, "for not staying quiet." Marina's life, meanwhile, crumbled piece by piece. She lost friends, strained family ties, and when word of the court case reached her employer, even her job slipped away. She called me once, late at night, her voice slurred from drinking. "You destroyed me, Caleb. I hope you're happy." I hung up without responding. Because happiness wasn't what I felt. It was something colder, sharper. Justice, maybe. Or just the satisfaction of knowing that the truth had finally clawed its way out from under the mountain of lies she'd buried it beneath. Months later, I saw Marina once more, by accident. She was standing outside the courthouse, thinner, eyes sunken, smoking a cigarette with trembling hands. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did, and chose to look through me. Either way, she looked like a ghost of the woman I once knew. Jason, on the other hand, stood taller than before. I saw him walk out of the building that same day, clutching a folder, a faint glimmer of hope in his eyes. He had a long road ahead of him. Courts, petitions, the delicate process of connecting with a child raised by another family. But he was no longer in the dark. That mattered more than anything. As for me, I closed that chapter of my life and moved on. I'd walked into Marina's world blind, believing her smiles, her stories, her carefully crafted image. I walked out with scars, yes, but also with the clarity of knowing I'd chosen truth over comfort. Sometimes I thought of the little girl, Jason's daughter, living her life, unaware of the storm raging around her. One day, maybe, she'd know the truth. Maybe she'd meet her father, see his face, recognize his smile in her own. And maybe then, Jason's years of grief would finally give way to something brighter. But for Marina, there was no redemption. Her empire of lies had collapsed, and she was left standing in the ruins, alone.